Hi, everyone. I'm Balázs. I'm a software engineer on the Chrome Web Identity team. And AG already mentioned that passwords create a number of issues. I would like to talk a little bit more about two of them in particular. The first one is password reuse, when your users are using the same password on multiple different websites. And the second one is phishing, when attackers trick your users into entering their credentials into fake websites. Historically, these issues have been really hard for developers to address, because they both have to do with your users being only human. So suppose one of your users, let's call her Jane Doe, has accounts on 50 different websites. What do you think? On how many other websites is Jane using the same password that she is using on your site? To answer that question, we've calculated some statistics client-side among Chrome Password Manager users. And if Jane is anything like them, she will be reusing that password on 10 different websites. That's 20% of all her accounts. What does that mean? It means that if Jane's password is compromised on any one of those 10 websites, it's compromised on all of them, including yours. So how often does this happen? According to another study, during a period of just 1 year, data breaches exposed a total of 1.9 billion usernames and passwords. So this means that even if you have implemented all the password management best practices, for instance, you serve your login page and preferably your entire website over HTTPS, you never store or log plain text passwords, you always hash passwords, and maybe you do even more, you're still not done. So suppose you are using two-factor authentication. To log in, Jane has to enter her password plus an OTP, a one-time password, for instance, a 6-digit number that she receives to her phone. Surely, Jane is safe now, right? Well, unfortunately, OTPs are phished just as easily as passwords. Let me show you what happens. As soon as Jane enters her password into the phishing page, the attacker connects to the real website and initiates a login flow using the freshly stolen password. The real website asks the attacker for the OTP. The attacker, in turn, asks Jane. In the meantime, the 6-digit number is sent over SMS to Jane's phone. Jane is under the impression that she's logging into the real website, so she expects that she gets asked for the one-time password. So as soon as it arrives, she enters it into the phishing page. The attacker then simply forwards the OTP to the real website, and with that, they just gained access to Jane's account. Similar attacks are possible if Jane is using time-based OTPs generated by an app on her phone or a hardware token, or if to sign in, Jane has to confirm that login attempt on her mobile device. The problem is that in all of these cases, we rely on Jane, a human, to recognize when she is not on the real website, but on a phishing page. Remember the study from before? It also estimates that around 12.4 million users fell victim to phishing during the same one-year period. This is why last year at I/O, we recommended using security keys instead. Many of you are familiar with the U2F universal second factor security keys that look like this. Some of you may even be using them for two-factor verification already. The main advantage of security keys over OTPs is that they cannot be fooled by phishing. Security keys talk directly to the browser. They can easily verify that the URL of the page that Jane is visiting is the legitimate URL and not a slightly different URL corresponding to a phishing site. So this removes the human error factor. It is no longer Jane's burden to verify the URL. But if security keys are so awesome, how come we aren't all using them on every website already today? Unfortunately, a key piece of the puzzle had been missing. Previously, there hadn't been a good way to access security keys on the web. Some of you are already familiar with the U2F JavaScript API, which was a great first step, but it also had a number of limitations. For instance, it wasn't available across all browsers. And this is why I'm super excited about the Web Authentication API, which is a brand new web platform API that provides a standardized way for using strong authentication on the web. The new API is coming to major browsers and will be available on both mobile and desktop platforms. And in fact, I'm delighted to announce that you can already try out the initial feature set with the latest Chrome beta. So let's see what makes this API so great. First, it's backwards compatible with existing U2F security keys. The very same key that you registered through the U2F API can now be used through the Web Authentication API. That means that you can migrate your site from U2F to WebAuthn without any user-visible changes. But WebAuthn is much more than just a new API. WebAuthn also enables authenticators that come in a wide variety of form factors, much more exciting than USB hardware tokens. So if hardware tokens are not your cup of tea, don't fall asleep just yet. WebAuthn also brings many new features that enable exciting new use cases. The single most important feature is probably that authenticators can now perform user verification. This means that the authenticator can locally verify the user. If Jane drops her authenticator on the street, you cannot just pick it up and use it. It only responds to Jane. User verification can take many forms. It can be done using biometrics, such as a fingerprint scan, or an easy-to-remember PIN code. And we are not only talking about external hardware tokens. With WebAuthn, the built-in fingerprint reader in your notebook or phone can also become a user-verifying authenticator. Regardless of form factor, what makes user-verifying authenticators so interesting is that they do not need to be combined with passwords to implement two-factor authentication. There is already something that you have and something that you are. So you get great security. And you also get a great user experience. You no longer have to type your password, which is especially frustrating on mobile devices.
In this example, we are logging into Outlook by going to login.live.com. Click on this Sign In with a security key. Insert your security key. Notice there is no username or password dialog screen. Instead, you will enter your 4-digit PIN associated with your security key. Your security key will start flashing. Touch your security key. You have now logged in with simple and strong passwordless authentication.